So coming up in part 1 of a 2-part lecture, lecture 4, the theory of data analysis, how to make sense of all that data that we've gone and collected.
Shut up and sit down.
Okay, so this video is all about the theory of data analysis, and this is the big picture stuff of analysis. This is what you'll get from this lecture series, lecture 4. You'll get to know the key differences between a descriptive and an interpretive analysis. You'll get to know the key approaches for analysing data in qualitative research, and we're going to cover 4 of these: thematic analysis, interpretive phenomenological analysis, grounded theory, and discourse analysis. And this will really give you a taster of each of these approaches. Now, in the coming weeks, we'll be focusing on thematic analysis only. You know, it's tricky learning a new approach, and just it just gets confusing if we add in more than one form of analysis. So we're going to just concentrate on thematic analysis, but I'm going to give you a taster of these other 3. So back on page 35 of your textbook, the authors talk about qualitative thinking. Now, I know you've already read this back in week 1. However, remember, we also talked about learning qualitative methodologies. It was not a linear process. In that spirit, I want to revisit some of the concepts that we covered back in, chapter 2. But it's going to help guide us when we're thinking about analysis. So why? Well, because this is another place where we can be easily confused when we're thinking about analysis in quantitative rather than qualitative terms. So let's take a moment here to think again about what is our purpose in
So what the hell are we doing here?
qualitative research. Now, we're looking to understand or explore meaning and the ways people make meaning. The research questions we ask reflect this. So our analysis of raw data is designed to provide some answers to these questions about meaning. So our purpose is to look at what meanings people give to their experiences themselves, and what meaning they give to their relationships. What then does qualitative analysis look like as a process? Now, the textbook back on page 35 gives the analogy of a quilt, and we looked at this in week 1 as well in the in the week 1 lecture. But it's helpful to revisit that here to give us a broad idea of what it is we're doing before we delve into details of particular types of analysis. So here is a quote from page 35. You start from a position where you have lots of shapes of material, your data, some of which are similar to others and some of which are different, and then you work at arranging them in a particular pattern to tell a particular story, the patterned quilt. The analysis, which is the analysis, the metaphor for the analysis you produce. So now I'm jumping ahead a little in your textbook because I want to continue for a moment exploring in broad detail what we mean by analysis. It's really helpful to remind ourselves where we're going, i.e. we're heading towards analysis, but what do we mean by this? What do we mean by analysis?
Analysis.
Now, we will of course be covering this again in different ways throughout the next 4 weeks, but it can help us if we're just starting out having a look at the end point you want to get to. Okay, so there are also some new concepts I'm going to bring in, which we will meet, which you'll see in the chapter you're reading for this week. And I want to take a moment just to define these and to link these to what we have covered in previous weeks. So there are 4 broad types of analysis we might undertake in qualitative research, and there are 2 dimensions along which we can differentiate these. The first is descriptive or interpretive analysis, and the second is pattern-based or constructionist analysis. So our analysis begins with our raw data, our collected words or images from interviews, focus groups, social media forums, and so on. From this point, we can do 2 things. We could just describe what people said, or we can go beyond description to interpretation. Now, later in the textbook, the authors use the term illustrative? Whatever. You'll read it. When you come across it, you'll see it, and you'll be able to pronounce it in your own particular way. So illustrative, that's it. So they use that term, and they use the term illustrative interchangeably with descriptive. I prefer descriptive largely because that's the one I can pronounce.
It's descriptive.
So just watch out for that confusing switch in terminology. Don't get confused. Illustrative is the same as descriptive when the authors are using those terms. Okay, now on page, it wasn't complicated enough, eh? Here we go. Okay, on page 179 of your textbook, the authors give you an example of thematic analysis, which is a descriptive analysis. You can see from these examples that descriptive analysis uses the data as illustrations of the surrounding story about, in that example, heterosexual men's experiences. The analysis re-describes what is illustrated in the extract, the transcript piece from the interview, the text from the interview.
Now, describe what you see.
Now pause the video, or else go into the Moodle site for this unit to download the PowerPoint slides, so you can read the text on this slide. I'm going to just go for this slide, on this slide, so read that text in your own time. So pause, and then play. Okay. So descriptive analysis suited the author's purposes in their research. The article on heterosexual men's experiences of infertility was aiming to highlight that there were emotional responses to infertility for men in contradiction of previous assumptions.
Your bag of fertilizer.
So descriptive analysis also reflects the type of data that is available in an online forum setting. It's often that sort of data you get from online forums is usually quite short, when we have far less access to rich details or complexity of people's experience. There's this sort of complexity we're able to get through interviews, face-to-face interviews. So with that sort of data, then thematic analysis can work quite well, and particularly descriptive analysis. Now, descriptive analysis can also play an important role in writing up your data. Sometimes we need to tell a story about what is happening, and often we do this when we write about our methods in a research paper. As for the data analysis section, well, descriptive analysis doesn't provide us with a lot of understanding about the hows and whys of an issue. So, for example, in relation to heterosexual men's experiences of infertility, I really wanted to understand not just that there were emotional responses, but why these particular emotional responses occurred and why they were shaped around helplessness. What are the aspects of the dominant cultural constructions of masculinity that may be shaping these responses? Is this similar to men's experiences when supporting partners during pregnancy, or supporting a partner during a partner's job loss, for example?
I am pregnant and it's all your fault!
The descriptive analysis doesn't tell us about the other ways in which heterosexual men may approach loss in a relationship. It doesn't really tell us why, it just tells us what. Now let's have a look at another example. On page 253, the authors provide an example where they use the same piece of data but from a descriptive and an interpretive analytic approach. This is the descriptive analysis, similar to that in the heterosexual men's infertility example. This analysis is summarizing what is said in the raw data and using an illustrative extract from the data. Again, have a proper read of this by either pausing the video or downloading the slides from the Moodle site. Now this, I can't stop pointing to the slides now. Now I think I know where they are. I'm going to be so wrong, aren't I? Because my right is your left. Oh, whatever. Over there. So this is the interpretive analysis of the same data. And in this interpretive analysis, the author doesn't take the account to be a factual one about the person's real experiences. You can see how this would be difficult to do. The participant is describing a perception about the world. Our role in analysis is not to then see whether this account is real or not, so we wouldn't be trying to find evidence that she does live in a neighbourhood where there is a lot of fear about being mugged, and that there has been a measurable change in the rate of muggings since her dad's time. Rather, we're interested in what she's doing with this account. Now again, pause or download and read in your own time. You know the drill by now. Now this example of an interpretive analysis is taken from the Farvad and Braun reading, which we discussed in week 2. Notice here that, what did I pronounce that? Braun? I don't know where that came from. So Sorry. So yeah, we discussed this in week 2. Now, notice here that the authors go beyond redescribing what Amar has said about what he likes about heterosexual sex. It goes further in that it explores more fully understandings of what it means to be sexually deviant and how these might reflect changing social norms around sexual practices. Now here the authors are considering the how and the why of this account of casual sex. They suggest that Amar's use of deviancy to describe what he enjoys reflects wider cultural constructions of what is normative. And it is this relationship between what he's doing and what society may consider transgressive that makes the sex pleasurable for him.
A pair of deviant robosexuals?
They highlight the positive use of deviance, which is often used negatively to describe something spontaneous and risque. So here's a sum up of interpretive analysis. It's about making interpretive claims about why this account is what it is. The cultural, historical, social, and economic context of the account. What this account or pattern means, in relation to broader social issues or changes. Now, this type of analysis is more difficult to get because it's quite abstract and conceptual. It also requires experience, particularly familiarity with the empirical and theoretical literature.
You'll find it in all the literature of the period.
Oh, by the way, just so you don't get confused, if you start reading more widely about this stuff, some authors use the phrase treating the data analytically to mean the same thing as interpretive analysis. Now, another distinction in terms of the type of analysis we do is between pattern-based or constructionist analysis. And in the next part of this lecture, and for the rest of our discussion on analysis, we're going to be looking at that pattern-based analysis. What do we mean by it, and what types of analysis fall under that umbrella? Well, do you remember back in week 1 when we were exploring the quantitative and qualitative paradigms? Now, as part of your chapter readings for that week, and in the lecture, we talked about a broad methodological distinction within the qualitative paradigm between experiential and critical methodologies. Experiential qualitative research validates the meanings, views, perspectives, experiences, or practices as expressed in the data. We call it experiential because participants' interpretations are prioritized, accepted, and focused on, rather than being used as a basis for analyzing something else. Now, research in an experiential approach is a process of collecting people's experiences and then putting an organizing, interpretive framework around what is expressed. These are the approaches we're covering in this unit. A constructionist analysis, on the other hand, is generally used in critical methodologies. In that approach, we're interested in people's words and practices not as mere descriptions of their reality, but we delve deeper into understanding how these descriptions are shaped by wider social realities, i.e., we're interested in language not as a descriptor, but as an active, alive way in which we construct our world.
What's your language, moron?
The way we think about the world transforms the world. The way we talk about the world transforms the world. It has an effect. Language has an effect on the world. Okay, so that's enough for now. We'll continue to go into this into a bit more depth in part 2. So, till next time. Ta-da!